Hey everyone, welcome back to the Going Disparate podcast with Pam and Mara. I am your host, Pam Rogers, and I think I just scared my co-host, Mara Dolan, by screaming into my microphone.
No, I actually found it very effective. Hi, I'm the other host. I'm Mara Dolan. I'm the Democrat. She's the Republican. And today I'm in a slightly different setting. I'm actually in downtown Boston, right next to the old State House. It's pretty cool.
Nice. Yeah. Love Boston. So fun.
Boston is great. And we've got a great guest today who once represented parts of Boston in Congress for 20 years. That would be former U.S. Rep. Mike Capuano. But before we get to him, just want to remind everyone you've found us, but just make sure that everyone else can too by subscribing on any podcast platform. We're on all of them. We're on iHeart. We're on iTunes. We're on Spotify. We're on YouTube. Wherever you listen to podcasts, that's where you can find Going Disparate, Politics and Crime with Pam and Mara, and give us a 5-star review, please, so other people can find us. And you can follow us on social media too, on Insta, Facebook, and Twitter at Going Disparate, and send us an email. We want to know what you think too. Just write to us at pamandmara@gmail.com.
Yeah, we love hearing from everyone. It's great to get all these emails in and talk about these topics. It's wonderful.
Well, and we've been hearing now from more people who are listening to the show. I actually ran into someone at a political event last weekend, and he was getting out of his car and he said, "Oh, hi, Mara, I was just listening to your podcast. I love it." It was just so nice.
It's great. Yeah, it's really great stuff. Really great stuff. So, hey, so to kick off our episode, before we talk to Congressman Capuano, you and I were having a small conversation about constitutional rights today and
Very
how
important.
we speak to our clients about their Fifth Amendment privilege to remain silent.
Yes. Yeah. I was saying that, I tell all my clients, you see what are called Miranda warnings, named after a Supreme Court case, Miranda versus Arizona, which established that you have a right to be informed of your right to remain silent under certain circumstances. When you're in custody and when the police are asking a question that's designed to elicit an incriminating response. But I always tell my clients, that sounds a little complicated. Don't have to think about it. You don't have to think that through. You always have the right to remain silent, and that can never be held against you. Right, Pam?
Exactly. I actually always just, even more simpler terms, I just tell my clients, never talk to the police. Never. Literally never.
Yeah.
Never. And I'm like, and if they bother you, say, call my attorney. Here's their phone number. Give them a call. And I guarantee you, I will never hear from them and they will never bother you again until potentially you are charged. But, you're either going to give, if the police come to talk to someone about a crime and you give them a voluntary statement, forget about Miranda and being in custodial interrogation, all that stuff, but just like you just voluntarily maybe go down to the police station, you give them a statement, and they end up charging you with a crime. And that's obviously going to be used against you. And then they're going to charge you with a crime. I always say to them, just let the police charge you with the crime. Period. Because they're going to charge you anyway. So hold back the statement that is going to get you into a lot of hot water, potentially. And just, that's so a lot of times I'll just call and I just did this very recently, I called the detective and I was like, this is who I represent. Obviously, we will not be coming down to speak with you. And he was like, okay, but I just had some questions. I'm like, totally understand, but we're not doing it. And he was like, all right, well, I'm just going to send him a summons in the mail to come to court. And I'm like, great, we'll be there. Thank you.
That's fine. Right. That's totally fine. I know. I say to my clients, you don't have to help them do their job. Right. You're innocent until proven guilty. And the party that has to prove you guilty is the prosecution. You don't have to help them do anything. In fact, you could literally do nothing throughout an entire criminal case. You don't have to do anything. It's all on them.
Yeah, absolutely. The burden is all on them.
And I do think sometimes people think that if they don't say something, it will make it look like they're guilty. But don't worry about that. They can't hold it against you. That's the whole thing. They can't hold it against you if you choose to exercise your right to remain silent.
Exactly. Exactly. And, sometimes people who are like, say, even just innocent or maybe a witness, they get worried. And then maybe they want to say that this is what happened because this is what actually happened. But then they sort of like deviate a little bit because they think, well, maybe that sounds a little bad. Maybe I'll start and then I'll just tell this little white lie. And then all of a sudden, like this turns into a disaster, right?
No, you don't.
Better off like zipping.
No. You don't want to lie. What you want to do is not say anything.
Yeah. I used to have on my, like when you would call my cell phone, I used to have part of my message, which is like, never, ever talk to
Really?
a police
Wow.
officer.
And you're
then people,
married to one, so
I know, right? Isn't that funny? Exactly. So yeah, it was pretty funny. But yeah, it's always like gave that advice to people because it's just so important. And people just don't realize it. They feel like they have some obligation that if someone's asking them questions, they have to answer.
no, it's really important for people just to know their rights, which is one of the reasons I think that, people complain that there are too many lawyers. I don't think so. Lawyers can tell you what your rights are. And the more people know their rights, the more empowered they are. We just celebrated June 19th or Juneteenth this week. That was people learning what their rights were. They
Yeah.
didn't know that they were free. And they
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think their Instagram accounts were down that day. So they just didn't know. Was that it?
Yeah, that's what it was, Pam. Yeah, after the Civil War, the Instagram accounts. I could make a
Joking.
joke here about certain people, not of the Democratic Party, who misstate history and facts, and ask if you're taking classes with them, but I'm not going to do that. Not going to do that. But I am glad that we're having this opportunity to help educate our listeners about their rights. And we're going to go back to this. And we're just going to make sure that folks know what their basic rights are. And the right to remain silent is really one of your most fundamental and most important rights.
It really is true. And I think because you and I do this every single day for a living, we sometimes forget about some of the really, really small things, which is your right to remain silent, or your right not to talk. And so you kind of forget about it, and we get so caught up in cases and you're dealing with expert witnesses and testimony and whatever. And, your thinking gets so involved. And then you don't realize that just like the average person who may have a question just needs basically sometimes just some basic level information, like you have a right to remain silent.
Right. Right. And now I'm going to bring in former Congressman Mike Capuano.
Excellent.
He's right on time. Here he comes. It just says he's connecting. He'll be right with us.
Hey there.
Hey, Mike Capuano.
Here we are.
There you are. Oh my goodness, it's so good to see you.
Yeah.
Pam and I have really been looking forward to having you, and I just want to introduce you first. Mike Capuano served in the U.S. House of Representatives.
Can't hear you. Hang on one second. I don't know. Oh, I got it. Wait a minute.
Okay.
There we go.
Excellent. Just want to introduce you first. Mike Capuano served in the U.S. House of Representatives for 20 years in a district that included parts of Boston and Cambridge and his hometown of Somerville, Massachusetts. He served as chair of then Speaker Pelosi's Task Force on Ethics Enforcement, which established the Office of Congressional Ethics. He served on the Financial Services Committee and the Transportation Infrastructure Committee. One of his best known votes was a vote against the Iraq War. He was appointed by President Biden last year to the Public Buildings Reform Board. We are so glad to have you with us, Mike Capuano.
Happy to be with you. I'm having some technological issues here, but I don't know. Maybe it's probably because I don't know what I'm doing.
No, you're perfect. You're perfect. So obviously, you know that I'm a Democrat, which means that Pam Rogers must be the Republican.
Exactly.
She served in the New Hampshire state legislature, so she knows a thing or two about legislation. And one of the first things that we wanted to ask you about is simply how Congress works, because we know that in this country, fewer than 1 out of 5 people even know that we have 3 branches of government. So how can they possibly understand how Congress works, which obviously is the legislative branch? Or maybe people don't know. That's the legislative branch, is Congress. What do you want folks to know about how Congress works?
Congress is kind of like a city council, is really what it is. It's the best way I can bring it home. Like a state legislature, it's the same thing. It's the legislative branch of the United federal government. It is much more disparate than a local group or a state group because the country's a big country. Very simple. People in Massachusetts do see things differently than people in New Hampshire, and both of us see things much differently than people in Mississippi, generally speaking. And so therefore we have to go, and the issues we deal with are very important for the most part, not all of them, obviously, but many of them are. Many of them are very emotional. Abortion, tax policy, foreign policy. Those are the kinds of things that get people's juices flowing. I was a mayor, a city council. I worked at the state level, and those issues get people going, but it's not the same thing talking about a pothole as it is talking about abortion, no matter who you're talking to at any time. And people tend to think that just because they know the answer, or they think you know the answer, which not everybody does. But even if they think you're right on an issue, they don't realize you got to go work with 434 other members of the House. That's a lot of people with a lot of different opinions. And they say, why can't all Democrats get along? Why can't all Republicans get along? Even within the two parties, there are massive differences of opinion. There are liberal Democrats and conservative Democrats. There are not liberal, but moderate to liberal Republicans and extremely conservative Republicans, and they don't always get along. So it's a big country with a lot of different opinions, dealing with very hot button issues that really are important to a lot of people. And it shouldn't come as a surprise that it doesn't work very well. It wasn't designed that way. It was designed to kind of maintain the status quo on a relatively even keel, even if that even keel is not intentional, even if that even keel is because of the dysfunction of the group at the time. It means no dramatic changes overnight on a regular basis, which is probably a good thing, but it is very frustrating. Again, having worked at both the state and local level, that can be frustrating as well, but you can usually find a way at some point to come up with an answer on most of these things. When you get to abortion, there's some gray area, but there's a lot of black and white, period. A lot of people will not compromise on what they consider to be their principles. So I think people need to understand that the United States Congress was not designed to be efficient. It was designed to be inefficient, and it does a very good job.
Well, Congressman, I want to say thank you so much for coming on. It's really, really nice to meet you. And last night I was talking to a really good friend of mine who you served in Congress with, and it's Congressman Frank Ginta from New Hampshire.
Sure.
And he was like, oh my gosh, tell Mike I said hi. And he said, he's very liberal. And I said, well, clearly I know that, Frank, from Massachusetts.
And Frank's pretty moderate.
He is. He really is. He really is. Actually, he's pretty moderate. He's pretty moderate. He's a good friend of mine, but anyway, he said to say hello. But I was reading your bio, and so I know who you are just because I watch the news, right? So I've known who you are, and I was so shocked to learn that you have been elected 9 times to Congress. That's pretty incredible.
10 times.
10 times. Okay, that's amazing. Honestly, that's very impressive.
Look, the people here were very intelligent for 10 times.
If you do say so yourself. How many times, just out of curiosity, did you face a Republican opponent in one of your congressional races?
I don't know. This is a district that, I don't mean to be rude, but being a Republican in this district is not something that causes a lot of trouble.
Right. That's honestly why I'm even asking, because my assumption is you probably didn't face a lot of Republicans because there's not a lot of Republicans in that district, but your major fight was really in your primary, or if you ever were primary.
The only fight. Yeah. And I'm not necessarily thinking that's good. I mean, it happens. There aren't that many districts that are so one way or the other. There are some. This one happens to be one. I'm a long-time solid Democrat who has my own internal problems with my own party. But I really strongly believe in the two-party system. It is not healthy when one party dominates the other in such a terrible fashion. Again, look, I'm a Democrat. I generally share the values of the Democratic Party. Again, I think anybody who just toes the line 100% one way or the other, they refuse to think on their own. I mean, both parties have shortcomings, but both parties have good values. And the truth is, Congress, and not just Congress, politics, state, local, and federal, should require compromise. They should require good people to come together and make understanding, make deals, in the sense that, look, I know what I believe, but I wasn't anointed with the only answer. If you and I disagree and I want to make any progress whatsoever, we have to make accommodations for each other. That doesn't mean I've given up my values. It just means I understand that, okay, get elected, I get elected. If we want to get anything done, we need to shake hands and move on. And if not, we will get nothing done.
Mike, that's really why we're doing the show, because we just think it's really important for people to know that Democrats and Republicans can have civilized conversations, respect each other's differences, respect each other's experiences, not put each other down, and work for the good of the country. So thank you so much for all that.
It's gotten more difficult, I will tell you, at least in Washington. there are too many people that run for office and get elected on the promise of not getting one. So, yeah, I think it's perfectly right and good to say, this is what I believe in, this is what I'm going to fight for. I will do everything I can to accomplish it. It's not the same thing as saying, but I will never compromise. But I will compromise. I will try to compromise as little as possible.
Right.
But it isn't, again, the old adage, half a loaf is better than none, is still true. It's true in your personal life, it's true in your professional life, and it should be true in politics. And unfortunately, there are too many people who get elected today. They're not lying. They tell the voters the truth. They tell the voters that I'm not going to get along with the other side. And when they get elected and then do it, people shouldn't be shocked.
Well, and I wanted to ask you about that actually, because House Speaker Kevin McCarthy recently lost a rules vote, which I guess is very rare, and reportedly because there were Republicans who were angry with him over the debt ceiling deal. Was that unusual? Do you have insights about that?
Incredibly unusual. It happened. I could count it on one hand that it's happened in 20 years on either side. I'm trying to think. I don't recall it ever happened on the Democratic side. There were a couple of times it get testy, but I don't think it happened. It happened a couple of times on the Republican side, and it's not the Democrats doing it. It's the Republican, in this case, like it has been in the past, it's members of the Republican Party not getting along with other members of the Republican. When it comes to a rule, it's a relatively mundane thing. It's simply a way to bring a bill to the floor. You can vote however you want within reason on the bill, but having the debate and being able to vote on the bill is kind of seen as, that's really a family matter. And it's looked at that way on both sides. When you vote against a rule, it's a real statement of what you think about your own leadership and what you think about what's going on in your party. That was what this was. I don't remember what the rule was about. I think if I remember correctly, it was a relatively mundane bill. But they took the opportunity. They were really sending a message to the speaker. We don't like what you did on this other thing, and you better make it right. Now, what happens from here out? One knows. I don't think they know.
And isn't that the problem, is that there could be a handful of legislators who sort of like hold all of Congress, for ransom, because maybe there's 10 or 20, I'm not sure exactly how many people, but like there's a certain amount of people that are really unhappy with something, and then everyone's held hostage.
That's exactly it. And it's usually the most extreme members, the furthest right or the furthest left, that take that role. People that understand, again, I'm a very liberal guy, but I know that the rest of the country isn't. So if I wanted to get something passed on gun control, right to choose, or whatever it might be, I have no choice but to make a deal with somebody else to do something that I may personally not think is enough. But it's the best example I can give people is the healthcare bill. I know a lot of people didn't like Obamacare, and there were many things in it that I didn't like. However, I voted for it not because it was perfect, but because it gave 20 million people more than we had before, health insurance coverage than before. Does that make it perfect? Absolutely, positively not. It just means, look at today and what do I think is going to happen tomorrow? And I knew there were going to be some bad things that came out of that bill. I knew that when I voted for it. However, I thought there'd be more good things. I still think that vote was the right vote. I know other people disagree, but that's why you do it. That's how you do it. There's no other way to do it. If you only vote for things that you think are perfectly good or perfectly bad, you will never vote for a bill in any legislation. And again, that's true in the state and the local level. There's something good and something bad in almost every bill, particularly the major bills, which are the only ones that really draw heat. Honestly, on occasion, my Republican friends, when they were in charge when I was there, they made my life easy by going so extreme it was easy to vote. Not always, and sometimes they made it tough for me to vote.
Yeah. Do you think it's possible that Speaker McCarthy will do what reportedly Speaker Pelosi did with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, sort of, because she seemed to sort of help inform her as to how best to get things done in the House?
Well, it depends. I mean, it's like anything else. The Republicans have, I believe it's 4 or 5 seat majority.
Yeah.
Speaker Pelosi, I believe the smallest majority had share was like 8 or 9 or 10. So there's a little bit more leeway there. Number 2 is the Speaker Pelosi is much more diplomatic. There were only a handful, and at the time, only a handful of extremely left members of the Democratic caucus. the extremely right members of the Republican caucus have grown over the years. It was one thing when there's 5, 6, 7. John Boehner had to deal with them. Paul Ryan had to deal with them. Newt Gingrich was one, and then he had to deal with them. They found a way because it was a relatively small number of people who just wouldn't make a deal even with their own friends. Speaker Pelosi had that, but had it to a smaller degree. In number one. Number two, it's a different thing when you're dealing with somebody who's young and super enthusiastic versus somebody who's older and super. Once you're committed to a view, you're less likely to change that view or that approach, not the substance, but at least the approach how to get to it. And I will tell you that right now, from what I see, Kevin McCarthy is dealing with a bunch of mature adults, well, sure, wise, mature adults who are just completely committed to their view of the world. And I think I've known from day one that his getting to the speakership I knew was going to be fun to watch politically, and it was. And watching him govern is going to be, I think it's painful, but on the sociological level, it's kind of fun to watch. But not really. I don't think it's good for the country. I don't think it's good for the Republican Party, personally.
Yeah. I don't know him, obviously. And I really thought it was interesting that he was from California, considering that is not the bastion of conservatism. But
his district is.
His district is, right, but the state as a whole is not. But I just thought, I thought it was an interesting choice. Again, I know obviously nothing about what happens inside baseball in Washington, D.C. I thought it was a really interesting choice. I probably, if it was me, probably would have backed somebody else. But I thought I just thought he was an interesting choice given where he was from. That's all. Honestly, just location wise, I thought it was a strange choice.
It's people move into leadership for 1,000 different reasons. It's a little difficult for one party to tell what's going on in the internal workings of the other party. I mean, I've known Kevin for many years, and it was obvious he was angling to be in leadership for many, many years before he got there. How we got there, I'm not 100% sure. I've talked to others, but it's also a matter of riding the wave. I mean, it's like anything else. You can say anything you want until you have the gavel. And the minute you have the gavel, now you got to deliver. And it's harder to deliver than a lot of people will tell you when they're running. When you elect me, anything, and I will solve all the problems of the world because I know all the answers, and I happen to agree with you on everything. And the minute
I'm gonna remember that line.
Yeah,
Just gonna use it over and over.
It'll get you elected, you unelected real fast.
There you go. So this is, of course, politics and crime with Pam and Mara, and really the biggest story right now, and I think in my lifetime in politics and crime in this country, is the indictment of former President Trump. You served in the Office of Congressional Ethics, so I'm guessing that you have some pointed thoughts about all of this. Would love to hear them.
Yeah, look, Trump is an anomaly, I think. He's broken the mold on 1,000 different things on the way to approach government. I think the proof is in the pudding. I mean, lost re-election. I think, again, when he ran for office, I knew he had a good shot at winning. I mean, a lot of Democrats around here, at least around Massachusetts, have poo-poo. Oh, no, it's like, you don't get it. If you talk to anybody outside of Massachusetts, you need to talk to them. And you will hear that, like or not, a lot of them are pretty angry and they look at him as a way to blow it all up. Well, when he got to office, he was ineffective at blowing it up, number one. And number two is he kind of just threw tantrums all the time. So, I mean, for me, I distinguish the policy from the politician. As a politician, and again, as a person, I don't know him as a person. I kind of find it to be embarrassing. I think even my Republican friends who like some of his alleged policies, and I say alleged because I'm not sure he believes them, but that's a different issue. But I haven't heard anybody say, I love him as a person, I want him as a person to be my president. It's like they may hate Biden and they may be voting for Trump again, but it's more vote against Biden than anything else. And it's just, I look forward to getting past this era of politics. I prefer, it's kind of funny, again, as a lifelong, relatively liberal Democrat, I missed the days of George Bush. How's that?
I know.
Yeah, but at least he lived within the norm of how we function. and I use him. Same thing with Newt Gingrich. I can't tell you how many times I said, gee, I wish we had Newt Gingrich back as speaker.
Wow.
I thought I'd say that. But everything's relative, and it just seems to be kind of coming off the rails. And my hope is the American people catch up to it. I actually think they've kind of caught up to it here in New England. We don't seem to elect that extremist of a viewpoint. Well, I guess I shouldn't speak so quickly because it could change tomorrow, but at the moment we don't have that. And other sections of the country, and it just stuns me all the time. I'm disappointed. And again, not about the policy. I wish I could sit here and say I don't like the directions the country's going in because George Bush is wrong. It's not even that. It's the quality of leadership to me right now is concerning.
Yeah, I voted for Trump in 2016. I was a big fan. Voted for him again in 2020. Will not be voting for him a third time. I did like some of his policies, but I think you're right. There were certain things where my husband and I both would just say, gosh, I wish he would just stop, right? I wish with the name calling or the tweeting or whatever it was, you just sort of like, it's this extraneous stuff that just doesn't mean anything, that doesn't help my life or my husband's life or my family's life. I want our politicians to help real people, right? I don't want it to be an ego contest, but I really did believe in him in 2016, and I felt he did a great job, and I agree, some great policies came out. However, it was the extra stuff. And now I think we're just into like bizarre land where I wish him well. Like, thank you so much for serving us. Thank you so much. Please go deal with your issues, because I'm more concerned about the issues that America has to deal with, right? Like, I'm not a billionaire like you are. I don't have 9 million lawyers. I know you've got a lot going on your hands, but like, right, I'm concerned with my pocketbook and crime and stuff like that. That's the stuff I want to talk about.
Yeah, I can't break to my heart to wish him well until he's off the scene. Once he's off the scene, maybe I'll wish. Up until now, he chose to put himself in the arena, and for me, it's.
I know. I mean, I wish him peace and happiness, but I don't want him to be monopolizing our political culture anymore. And I want him to answer.
You got to give him credit. He's good at that. I mean, if he's, I don't think he's good at much, but boy, does he manipulate the media.
Yeah. I think it's getting a little bit better. I mean, we certainly saw this week, he gave a couple of interviews on Fox where they pretty much reamed him out. So that's pretty new. So
I haven't seen, it was a news report today about some interview he just had on Fox, and I kind of missed the news.
I mean, the guy completely, because Trump was saying, well, I bring all the best people with me. And he just gave this list of people he'd worked with who've been indicted, who've been convicted, and people he's worked with who are now running against him: Nikki Haley, Chris Christie, Mike Pence. It's sort of like, how can you sit there saying you have this great team that does great work and they're loyal when this is the case? And he also admitted to, willful retention of classified documents in the interview.
I know. It's just, like I said, I'm looking forward to the passing of this era.
Yeah.
What do you got? And I haven't had a conversation with Mara or frankly any Democrat about this, but what do you think about Joe Biden's recent, was it an appearance where at the very end of his appearance, he said, God save the Queen, man. And he kind of like did a mic drop and he walked away. And then he's like saying some crazy things. And I mean, do you think he's all there?
Look, he's the nominee we have, and it's like everything else. It's been a while since I had a person run for president that I really wanted to vote for. Yeah. So, and I think that's true. When I had my name on the ballot, I don't think there were that many people who ran out and said, I really, really, really want to vote for Mike. I think they said, he's okay compared to.
I did when you ran for U.S. Senate, Mike. I
know you did, Mara, and I appreciate that. But I think most people probably did. They probably thought, okay, he's better than the other person, the other people. And I think that's how most people vote. And it's just, yeah, I mean, Joe Biden is the president. He's going to be our nominee. So for me, I guess it doesn't serve any purpose for me to sit here and say that these are his faults. And I know he's not perfect. I know he's not a perfect president. I can see many of his shortcomings, but again, if he's running against Donald Trump, it'll be the easiest vote I've had in a long time.
I mean, do you think that's going to happen? Do both of you think that's the? I mean, I honestly don't know what's going to happen. I really don't. I have no
actually
clue.
today I think it is. At the moment, I mean, it just seems like no matter what happens to Trump, there's a certain base in the Republican Party, and it seems like the opponents to Trump, they just can't get their act together. It's like exactly what happened 8 years ago. I don't think Trump would have been the nominee had the other people running for office gotten together earlier and said, okay, look, I think I'd be the best president, but I think Mitt Romney or whoever would be, okay, we'll be with him.
Well, that's what Chris
Eight or nine
knows.
good candidates or decent candidates, and they're running. It's just right now, it's built. This is like Donald Trump's dream campaign at the moment. So I think at the moment, I have to say it looks like a rerun of 4 years ago.
I'm wondering if with this indictment and perhaps other indictments that reportedly are along the way, if this will be like what we saw recently with the January 6th hearings and earlier with the Watergate hearings, that they do move public opinion as more and more people become better informed about what actually happened. They become concerned.
Again, for the moment, we're talking about Republican primary voters, not
true. Yeah.
Not the independent. The independent tend not to vote in primaries either way. And for me, I have to be honest. I mean, I people ask me what I think is the biggest problem in politics today. They want to talk about term limits or the biggest problem is that too many people refuse to participate in primaries. And so if they leave both parties with a greater possibility of nominating an extremist, as opposed to forcing, I mean, independents, non-registered people tend to be a little bit more moderate than either one of the major parties. And if they participated in the party primaries, I think they would bring both parties' platforms and probably more of their candidates back towards the middle. And I'm not a middle guy, I'm a liberal, but at least with middle people, I can deal with them. If the Republican majority was real, at least I could deal with a Republican majority. I can get 10% or 20% of what I believe in, as opposed to 0%. And I also think it's better for the country. And, though again, I am partisan, I make no apologies for that. Country first. And money is probably like third or fourth in my world, but it's up there, but it's not that high. I mean, first item is country first, and do the best you can. And right now, I just think too many people are putting party first. Too many people in office are putting party first, and too many people who wouldn't do that don't participate in primaries. And then they complain about both nominees. Like, well, you chose not to participate, and guess what? The most extreme voices, they make sure they vote in primaries. And so therefore, Democrats are going to tend to have more liberal nominees. Not always, but the tendency is there. And Republicans are going to tend to have more conservative nominees. And the average person is going to sit there and say, that guy's too far right, that guy's too far left. They all stink, I hate them all, and the country's going to hell. Like, well, you're an adult, you're supposed to be mature, you're supposed to be conscientious, and go vote. And, it doesn't mean you have to vote for somebody you love. Just vote for the best candidate you get. If you hate them all, you run.
Pam, I think we should start including that message in all of our podcasts. Get out there and vote. Yes. You may agree with me, you may agree with Pam, doesn't matter. You vote for the candidate you think is best. And, whoever wins, and that's the American way. That's how we do things around here.
And it would be better for America.
Yes.
Make for better candidates, which makes for better government.
That's totally true. I forgot to tell you, Mike, that we have lightning round questions, but they're super easy. But I just want to check with Pam. Did you have another question for Mike?
I just want to say one thing, just piggyback on what we were just talking about, is that so about 20 years ago, I worked on Senator Bob Smith's re-election campaign when he was running for Senate again in New Hampshire. And I loved him, and I still love him, and I love him and his wife. They're amazing. And I know Mara and I a couple months ago were talking about that experience that I had, and she was like, yeah, but Senator Smith was, pro-life and you're pro-choice, and there was something else you mentioned. And I was like, I know, but here's the thing. I don't agree with the candidate on every single issue, but I pick like what's really important to me. And then I look at the person. And to me, Senator Smith actually really cared about the people in New Hampshire, like legitimately cared about the average person in New Hampshire. He has a very big heart. And that is what meant the most to me. And so when we were just talking about that, it kind of reminded me of that, how, you know, you're not going to agree with a politician on every single solitary thing, kind of, nor should you. But just, you know, pick and choose what's important to you and your family. And like you said, just get out there and get active and vote. Just do that.
I've told people for years, look, my wife and I have been married almost 50 years.
Congratulations.
And we work it out, and we sometimes vote for different candidates. And that's just the way it is. What's the big deal? You do it. Again, if I don't get to vote, and most of us don't ever get to vote for many candidates we love. It's okay, we like this person, okay. Just like you just said, Pam. Not every issue. Give me 10 issues. You're in the ballpark. I don't care if you're off on one. I don't have to like it. But and again, even if pro-choice is your decision, how pro-life are you? Are you going to go out there and take it all the way? Or are you just going to, hey, if you give them the vote, you're going to vote pro-life? There's a difference, and it's not just that. That's true on every single issue. It's not all or nothing. Most people are, 60%, 70% on whatever it might be. Anyway, so I haven't had any success. I think the percentage of people voting in primaries has probably gone down in my lifetime. But that doesn't mean I'm going to stop saying what I see as the truth.
Exactly, which is why we are so glad that we had you on today. So we just have 3 quick lightning round questions. I will start. What's a book that changed your life, or that you want other folks to read?
Any number of books. I just finished a real good book the other day. A book that changed my life. I have to go back to high school, and if I had to pick one, it'd be probably Oliver Wiswell. And it was a book. It's a book about the revolution, written from the perspective of a Tory, someone who stayed loyal to the crown. And that person was a regular person, just having regular stuff. Obviously, on the wrong side of history, but not a bad person, not an evil, just didn't see it. And it just was the first time I remember really being exposed to a thoughtful presentation by somebody who we never really talked about Tories, but if you ask me about, oh no, everybody would be a revolutionary, everybody would be a patriot. That's not true. During the revolution, only about 10% of the population was for freedom, or for independence. Probably 80% was like, leave me alone, I'm just going to go back to farming. And 10 or 20% was, nope, we're staying with Britain. So, and I never really thought about that. So it really, for me, opened my eyes that no matter what the issue is, there is another side to the issue. And no matter how, you might think it is, it's kind of important to talk, listen, and consider the other person a good person, even when they're wrong.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, second question. If you could meet any politician from history, living or dead, who would it be?
I think they're dead. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to go back too far. I mean, I like political history. I mean, I guess I'd have to say Abraham Lincoln, but you throw Genghis Khan in there too. And honestly, I hate to say this, I'm going to get in trouble for it, but even say Adolf Hitler.
Yeah.
Like, how are you thinking? I mean, so there's lots of them that, as far as I'm concerned, I would love to kind of dig a little bit into their brain and figure out how things worked out. But I have to say, at least in American history, probably Abraham Lincoln, because of the extraordinary life that he led, the many failures in his life, and yet obviously the fantastic total part of his life that has to be taken into consideration. But honestly, I could probably list hundreds of them, dozens of them. Gandhi,
Gandhi, yeah,
lots of them. Hell, I should say, heck, Mother Teresa. I'd love to pick her brain. What are you thinking? Why did you do all these things? The answer is there's a lot. I like political history, and unfortunately, I probably know more than I should.
No.
Were you, Congressman, I was reading your biography yesterday just to kind of figure out everything that I should know about you, but your dad was a World War II soldier, correct?
He was. His father was, he joined the service before the war. He grew up poor, and the military was way to the middle class. He actually joined the Navy. And he decided he wanted to be a fighter pilot. And when fighters at the time, they were propellers, so they weren't jets. And he popped his eardrum at a bomb dive practice, and so he had to wash out. That was a year before Pearl Harbor.
Oh, wow.
Just when Pearl Harbor hit, he came back, went to work. He said, "The heck with it. The Navy won't have me. I'll join the Army."
Wow.
Career military guy, and got wounded. He was one of the first soldiers wounded on German soil, and spent like 18 months in a military hospital. So yeah, my dad was a World War II soldier, but he lived the classic life. Never ever spoke about it. I heard almost nothing about it until I had children, and on occasion he would tell my children stuff. And I'm looking at him and say, "You never told me." He said, "Well, it takes a long time to get over that and talk about that stuff." And now that I'm older, I really wish I could have picked his brain a lot more about his experiences. But yeah, my dad was a World War II veteran and very proud of his service.
Yeah, that's great.
That-
That's great. I
that's-
love it. Great American.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Very, very humbling, Mike.
Yeah.
It's an extraordinary service from your father.
Yeah.
So now the last question is going to sound so trite, but it yields some surprisingly interesting answers. What's your favorite vacation spot?
Well, there's probably two. My backyard.
That's
Um,
good. That's
Well,
good.
it's kind of funny. When I was in Congress, you live 150 miles an hour. And I had done that for a long time, not just in Congress. I did it when I was mayor, when I would, you just do. And when you're living that life, you don't realize how much time you're putting in until you stop. And when I stopped, I realized, oh my God, people can actually sit in the backyard and have a cookout and maybe have a beer or two on the weekends. This is what people do. And it has, so I actually like doing that kind of,
That's nice.
I was almost late to this. I was on my front porch reading a book.
Nice.
My wife came out and said, "Don't you have a 4 o'clock?" I said, "Oh, geez, I forgot. I was sitting on the front porch. I was just talking to a couple of the neighbors." So for me, that is, but I have a place in New Hampshire. I've been a long time. I've been going to New Hampshire since I was born. And
Wow.
I was up there 30 some odd years ago. And I love going up, but I'm not a New Hampshire person. I'm a city guy. I have to admit, when I'm in the woods for, more than a couple of nights, I get nervous without any sirens or gunshots or whatever. But I love going to New Hampshire. Other than that, I like traveling. I've been fortunate enough to travel a lot in my life. And I favorite spots, any beach in the Caribbean, probably, or any restaurant in Italy. That's kind of,
You can't go wrong. Can't
it
go
covers a
wrong.
lot.
You can't go wrong. And we all love New Hampshire. I was born in New Hampshire. My daughter, son-in-law, and grandson are in New Hampshire. Pam's in New Hampshire. So, but anyway, but it's been absolutely wonderful to have you on today. Thank you so much for joining us, Mike Capuano. Always
It was great
a
seeing you
treat to
both.
see you, and we hope
Thank
to
you,
see you again
Congressman.
soon. Thanks
Thank
so
you
so
much.
much.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye.
What a great
That was-
guy.
He's a great guy. He's so smart. He thinks
Yeah.
about things. He's principled. I loved what he had to say about Congress. It's 435 people with 435 different opinions from, that's it. That's all you need to know. What do you
I
think is going to
know.
happen?
I know.
Right?
I love hearing like an insider's
Yes.
view sometimes, because someone like him who spent 20 years, that's such a significant period of time, that he really is like an insider, we always call it inside baseball, right? Like, so he's an inside baseball kind of guy. So it's really interesting to hear what he has to say. And I really appreciate the fact that he recognizes that, we do have to work together. We all have our beliefs, but there are times when it's like, you just have to compromise, right? I can't, like Pam Rogers can't get what she wants all the time. I have to compromise.
That's the way the world works. So of course that's the
Yeah.
way government works. And I loved what he had to say about how, and you were saying this as well, you don't find the candidate that you think is perfect. You find the candidate who, agrees with you on things that are important to you or has personal qualities that you really value. It's what do you value? And no candidate is going to be your dream. If you vote for the candidate you think best,
Exactly.
and get out there and vote. He's right. Just
I
get
know that
out
was
there.
such a good point, because I think we've talked about, I'm not sure which podcast we talked about this on, but we did talk about with someone, and it's a very true point that during primaries, it's sort of like the party loyalists who come out. So if for
Yes.
Republicans, it's probably the more conservative, and for the Democrats, it's probably the more left-leaning.
It
right?
is.
And so those moderates and the middles and the independents don't come out. And then what ends up happening in the primary is you get the really conservative or the really liberal candidate, and then they have to go into a general election, and it just doesn't really always go over that well.
Right. And then you've got people in the center who don't like either candidate and therefore might stay home.
Right.
And then they're not as invested in our government because they don't feel like they're a part of it. So seriously, folks, just get out there and vote. And I
Seriously.
I love Mike was like, if you don't like any of the candidates, run yourself.
It's
Get
so
out there.
True. It's so true. And can I just add, I know I threw this in at the very end, but I loved him talking about his dad. And I love,
my
when they
God.
talk about like World War II service, and he was so proud of his dad. And I just like looking at his face, and just a real sense of pride. And I love that, because it should be a real sense of pride, because his dad obviously was a real American hero.
He was. And Pam, I never knew any of that. I'm so glad that you found that out and asked him about that. It was incredibly moving to listen and talk about his father. Wow.
It always
Wow.
is. I know you and I both come from very long military families, long serving military families. So
Well, my
I know it's
father and my
important to us.
stepfather were both in the military.
Yeah.
So
My dad was in the Army.
And my maternal great grandfather fought for the Confederacy in North Carolina. I only learned that recently. Yep. Got a picture of
What?
him in his Confederate uniform.
Oh
Yep.
my God.
I know. It's a bit much, but
Yeah. I'm like a huge Civil War buff. Like I live for the Civil War. And
yeah,
stuff.
and you didn't support the Confederacy.
Clearly not. No.
Not with the Confederacy on that one. No.
I'm on the right side of history on that
on the
one.
right side of history. So I was like, oh my God, whoa, one of my ancestors fought for the Confederacy. So
Unbelievable. Wow. All right.
we all,
stick that one back in the closet, Mara.
well, I'm in the middle of my application for the Daughters of the American Revolution. So I've got to put all this
You don't pull it out.
documentation together. He does not count. So
Yeah. Are you going to join the, so I'm a member of the Exeter chapter. Are you going to join the Exeter chapter?
I'm going to join the Concord chapter.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yes.
sure. I'm sure that's good too.
Exactly. You're going to go somewhere. You're going to join the DAR, and you can join in Concord. That's what you do.
I know. Did you know that little fun fact that Exeter was the Revolutionary War capital of New Hampshire?
I did not know that little fun
a lot
fact.
of people think it's Portsmouth, but it was.
Oh,
it's
no.
Exeter.
That is blowing my mind because I live in Concord. I grew up in Saratoga, which was the turning point of the revolution. Concord, of course, being the start of the revolution. And I
Right.
was born in the New Hampshire capital of the revolution. That's wild.
It's amazing.
The revolution has been following me, or I've been
Whole
following
life.
my whole life. Anyway, this was a great show. And I
Great.
love the show. I love
Love
the
it.
show. I really do.
So fun.
We have such a good time. We have such good guests. We love our listeners. We'd love to hear from you. Drop us an email at pamandmara@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Subscribe on any of your any podcast platform. You will find Going Disparate, Politics and Crime with Pam and Mara. And please also give us a 5-star review to help other folks find us, and follow us on social media on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Going Disparate. It's been great to be with you today, Pam, and just love knowing that the listeners are out there appreciating what we do. It means a lot to us.
It's great. And just so everyone knows, we're finally able to get our videos posted on YouTube. So you can subscribe to us on YouTube, so you can actually see us doing the show, because I think I make a lot of faces.
You do, Pam, but they're all good ones. Yeah.
I make a lot of faces. So it's like, you can just listen to us like if you're in your car, but if you're at home, you can just like pull us up on YouTube and watch the craziness ensue. So thank you all for joining us, your place for stress-free politics, and where your political adversary may end up being your best friend.
Ain't it the truth? See you next time, everyone.
Bye.